Hi, everybody. This is Rajam Roos. I am the CEO and founder of the San Diego Pain Summit, and I am here with Sandy Hilton as part of this online summit to kind of continue discussions we've had at summit conferences or, in the audience, things that are important to us as clinicians. And so Sandy Hilton earned her Doctor of Physical Therapy degree from Des Moines University. She's worked in multiple settings across the U.S. with a neurologic and orthopedic emphasis, combining these with a focus in pelvic rehabilitation for pain and dysfunction since 1995. She now teaches health professionals and community education classes on returning to function following back and pelvic pain, and co-teaches advanced level male pelvic floor evaluation and treatment for entropy physiotherapy, as well as neurodynamics and sensory integration for pelvic pain in a practical application of pain science course with pelvic health solutions. And she has a lot more interesting things about her background, and you'll be able to read those on her bio page on this website. And so welcome, Sandy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about maybe with this discussion, talking about something a little different that is often overlooked, and that is the financial side of working from a perspective of where you're trying to work based on pain research and do things like add more communication and add more listening with the patient. So as far as how does that affect a clinician on the financial side as far as the patients they can take and the amount and all that?
Well, I think you have to acknowledge that there's a tension to that. We talk about all of the great talks at the summit have been on really putting the person at the center of care and doing patient-centered care, not just as a phrase, but like real, where they're saying what they feel, and that takes some time. And then in the physical therapy world, you have to know how to get paid for your time. So that's a tension. And also that means you're only going to be talking to them. So you're seeing one person at a time. And then billing for that is a challenge as well. So yeah, those are hard things. And it's one of the things people are like, well, I love the thought of this, but I have no idea how to put it into practice where I can actually make a living and do what you're saying that we need to do.
And you were saying you were hearing someone mention that at a conference that you were at, where someone was saying, this is great and all, but it will affect my income because instead of seeing 8 patients an hour, I can only see 1 patient an hour.
Right. And that was someone who worked with other professionals, and they basically went and did the manipulative techniques and talked to them a little bit, did the manual therapy techniques, and then moved on to the next one. Mm-hmm. So the patients might be there for half an hour, 45 minutes each, but that person was seeing one person. It's a pretty standard technique and practice for a few different fields like chiropractic and some outpatient PTs and naturopathic. And as you get into an international world of how people practice, there's a lot of different names for the same kind of therapy. So yeah, how do you earn a living at this and still help people in ways that are good? That's an ongoing conversation on the social media spaces. They talk about having other people do some of it, like having aides or techs or assistants do some of the treatment so that you're freed up to do other things. Essentially would be having 2 or 3 people in the clinic rolling through, generating income at a time. We do it one at a time at Entropy, and and you just need to charge what you need to charge. So that's a whole nother conversation. And I get jealous sometimes or envious. I'm not sure what's the word for when I don't want other people to stop. I just wish I could do it too. Of massage therapists where people have a set price for your time, and no matter what you're doing in that time, that's the price that's there. I think that's really wise. And we've set our codes at Entropy, the physical therapy codes that are used for billing. I said that wrong, that's why I rolled my eyes. The codes that are used for physical therapy billing, they're not owned by physical therapists. We share them with other people. So for instance, if I did an hour treatment, one of mine today, where we did about half the time we were talking about sensory integration techniques and how to change the sensations they were having through the pelvis in this instance. And I did some manual therapy and we did some movement. I got the same price for that hour regardless of what we did, but the codes that I use depend on what we were doing and how that fits the definition of those codes. I think that's where you see a lot of conversations getting into how do you code properly.
Yeah, and something to what you were saying about how, you work by the hour. I've worked out of physical therapy offices, and I've also been a patient. So I've been there where, you're put in one room to do whatever, and then he goes around to all the different rooms where there's other patients. I did work out of one office where the way they worked was to give the patient a full hour. So it was a big open space room, but he had like 4 different aides, and they each would have a patient for the full hour. So I don't know if that's like something if a physical therapist wants to do.
Yeah, there's setup that's like that. It certainly depends on a whole lot of things, like the training of those people. Because you, as the person that's one of those 4, are paying the price of as if the physical therapist was with you for the whole hour. So those charges go in as if it was that PT doing all 4 of those treatments.
Oh,
so
okay.
They're codes that are a certain amount. So gosh, get some coffee for all the people that are watching this. We start talking medical coding, we're going to make this really fun and exciting.
I'll have the editors of the video like put splashes of color that go but I think it is an important lesson because that this was one of the
how you get paid, right?
How do you code? What codes do you use for?
So my apologies to all the coders out there, because I am going to make this make sense to me.
I think they're waking up now.
I think so. They're like their antennas are up. So if you go to the grocery store and you buy some things, there's prices for each of those things. And you know what they are because they're right there on the shelves. Or you go clothes shopping and there's a tag with a price on it. A lot of times in healthcare, those prices aren't clear. And they're not even clear if you would know them because it's a complex system, which is a whole another conversation about why. But I can do a compare and contrast. So for instance, at Entropy, and my bias is it's like this because Sarah Haig and I like it this way. It works well for us. And other places may do it differently. But so what we have is we put all of our codes at the same price. So whether you're there for an hour for manual therapy, neuromuscular re-ed, or exercise, it's the same price because they're done on 15-minute codes. It's just how we chose to do it. And that works for Medicare guidelines and everything else as well. So it's very actually simple for us. You know exactly what your charge is going to be because it's based on how much time you're going to be there. Other places, each code has a different cost to it. And very few places say what their costs are per code. You're free to set them yourself with some.
Okay. I didn't realize that. I thought the health I thought the health insurance set the price for the codes.
Nope, they set the price for what they will pay for the codes.
Okay.
So there is a difference. So just like we're going to turn it into grocery shopping or clothes shopping, there's the price on the tag and that's what you pay. Unless it's a sale, but you know what the sale is. And it's clear. So there's that. So let's imagine we're at a place. I used to work in a state that I will not name, but that means it's not Illinois. Manual therapy, when I put my hands on someone and I'm helping them feel better through manual techniques, is the code for that is called 97140. manual therapy. And entropy, 15 minutes of that is $35. It's on our website, so there's no surprise. I worked at a place once upon a time where 15 minutes of 97140 was $62.70, because that's the max they could get out of, that's the max they were allowed to charge for that code in that region.
Mm.
To make it more fun, it's much like groceries, where an orange might cost you one price in Florida and a different price in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same kind of thing. It depends on a lot of factors. So the cost of one unit of manual therapy can be different in different locations in the same city and different across the country. And they're not under any obligation right now that's enforced to post that anywhere. So you don't know as a consumer how much it's going to cost you for your treatment. And a lot of places, if you call and ask, they aren't able to tell you, because it's based on what they do when you're there.
Mm.
So it's hard, because it's allowed to be hard. Then to make it more fun, that's what's charged. But if you send that bill, so that you come in as a person and you might have a copayment or not that you have to pay, and then you get your treatment and you go away, the bill is sent to the insurance company, who has had those clinics sign contracts about how much they're going to cover or for what cost. So what might be written down, like let's say one clinic I know of, it's $480 for an hour of manual therapy, and the standard pelvic health treatment would be $480 an hour. But the insurance company might only pay 120 of that, 140 of that. The difference is often just gone, because you can't bill the patient and things. And that totally inflates the cost of healthcare. And it makes it really hard for people when they're trying to say, well, I want to go for therapy, and let me see what the cost would be at all these different places. It can be really hard for them to get that answer. So that's a part of it. And then, so we got that part. So it's like grocery shopping, but you're not really sure what you're really going to pay when you leave. And the store isn't sure what they're going to get.
Mm-hmm. It's like when people from other countries come to the U.S. and they go shopping and they assume the tax is part of the cost.
Right, and do you tip or not tip? And
yeah, and then they're like, but the shelf says $3, and they're like, we have tax, and there's a different tax in each state.
Different cities, yeah, it's like that. And then, but then you don't pay it; somebody else pays it, except for they pay differently for different people, and it makes it really crazy. So there's that piece of it that has to be taken into account when, as the practitioner, you're thinking, I want to provide a biopsychosocial care. I want to use the science we know about how to help people that are in pain get better a little faster, we hope, or maybe prevent it from going chronic. All of the great information we get. And you go to your clinic and you go, okay, I'm going to talk to you. Wait, that's neither exercise nor manual therapy. What do I just call these 15 minutes I spent or 20 minutes I spent talking to you? How do I get money for that? And that is a really interesting question, because in some settings they won't let you bill it at all. Mm-hmm. In my setting, I tend to not just sit and talk to people. We're also problem solving, and it's not just sitting and listening. And I think that's where one of the misconceptions comes in is it's a conversation you're having, which is changing how they think about their self, which is changing how their self thinks about their self. And so I can argue that that's a little bit of neuromuscular re-ed or retraining or all sorts of different education that helps to create a physical change in a person, especially if we're problem solving how you might do things. Like you're decide that movement's really good for you, so you're going to take some breaks every hour and do 5 or 10 minutes of moving to keep stuff going and to keep your confidence up that you can feel good. Talking and problem solving, that is part of therapy. It's part of the education of what to do. So I do think that's part of billable time. I don't think that that's creative billing at all. I think that's being honest about the value of our education and time.
So there's a code for education?
There is a code for education. A lot of insurance companies won't pay it, but I put it under neuromuscular re-ed most of the time, unless we're talking about a specific exercise, and then it will be under exercise. It's actually legit to include the training of it in your code.
Well,
It's
that
not,
sounds appropriate as well.
well, and it's yeah, that's what you do. But it can't just be chatting about their favorite movie. It needs to be it needs to be part of something that is, unless going to watch a movie is part of what you're doing for graded exposure. So it's always interesting conversations. I think your documentation needs to support it, but ultimately we do get to bill for our time. That doesn't answer the question for that gentleman from the first Pain Cloud summit, because I still only see one person at a time. But then I need to have my charges high enough to make seeing one person at a time cover the costs and pay the bills and pay me too.
Do you think that you've made that balance in exchange as opposed to someone who may need to see the 8 patients at a time? Do you think what you've set it for that 1 hour has worked? And
it's working. It would work better if we charged more, because things are expensive and the cost of living continues to go up. I don't think I could retire like this. We'd need to make some modifications in other streams of income, but because there's a finite number of people you can see as one practitioner if you only see them one at a time. So you can do the math and figure out what max income could be for a week. The difference is that when we get paid, we are paid that. It's not that we're billing that and hope we get paid that. It's that we get that money right then. It doesn't go to 8% going out to a biller or also paying staff or anything like that. It's all ours.
okay, so that they pay your, what is that
People
called
pay
again?
us directly, just
Directly.
physical therapy.
Because I noticed more.
People call it like a cash practice or things like that, but that just means we pay at the time.
I noticed more physical therapists are heading to that route.
I think so much, and much like the massage therapy world, I hope stays in that route. I know there's talk sometimes about massage therapists wanting to take insurance, and I would just caution greatly against it, because it adds to your costs and reduces how much you're going to make per person. And the math on that doesn't work out.
So if the fellow was sitting with us who asked about the 8 people, he gave his problem. Do you have any thoughts on what you might say to him if he was, say, listening to us right now? Or
I think I think that what I would say is maybe have people work with you, like that assistants or other people where they wouldn't get paid as much as you do. So it'd be like someone that you train, like in physical therapy, we have physical therapy assistants, or even just a really clever person could be trained, but I'd rather have a PT assistant as a physical therapist that can do some of that. So I could imagine if I had a PT assistant working with me, that I might do about half the treatment and they might do half the treatment. So then if we each have a person there at a time, technically that's 2 people there for me. And I'm paying that assistant money, but not as much money as I would pay a PT. So there'd be like an extender of myself. So I would say that that's how I would manage it, rather than compromise on the care that's given, to have someone else provide it. But that person needs to provide it. They can't call it in. So they need to be trained in education and helping people with self-efficacy and helping people move well if they're afraid of it. And I think that there's room for that. You'd have to choose your people pretty carefully. And truly what we're really aiming to do is help people learn how to take care of themselves. So there's a lot of education that goes on to make people be able to do the things for themselves.
do you think sessions could be made shorter to do that? So when I had my practice, I had clients who would just come in for a half hour, once a week. And I wonder if that's one way to resolve the issue of instead of taking less people an hour, you could do shorter sessions with so many people in that hour maybe.
And you still have to work out the financial how much money do you need a month?
Mm-hmm.
And then do the budget on that, for what you're gonna need to charge. It turns into a business class to do that. And that's like the biggest thing I think, that would I get sometimes frustrated about the profession of physical therapy in the US, is that you could do a random sampling of physical therapists that don't own their own clinic. So that clinic owners and maybe department managers would have to be taken out of that. But not very many PTs, I think, actually know how much is charged per unit, how much a patient is getting billed for what they're seeing, or how much the insurance companies are paying for what's being billed. Um, and if you don't know that information, it's really hard to have a conversation or really informed care. It's kind of blissful ignorance. Like, I'm just going to treat the way I want to treat and it'll all work out. But if things are being denied by insurance companies that patients need, then there needs to be a conversation with those payers that you're not paying us for care that's required, for best quality care. So rather than call it something else that is covered or not do it, I think what needs to happen is the coverage needs to be accurate.
I see. So you're saying the clinic owners know what these charges are, but the physical therapists working under them don't know what these
Don't always. In my experience, it's been very rare for physical therapists that do not own the clinic or participate in management to know the unit charge, or to know, or I guess, and to know how much is being paid by the insurance companies for those charges. So they may know, yeah, it's $65 for a 15 minutes of manual therapy, but they don't know what's actually getting paid of that. So they might have an overinflated idea of, we are making so much money an hour. It's like, no, you are charging so much money an hour. But if you don't know what's actually being paid, collected on those charges, then you don't know.
And do you think that would affect, so say if I'm working for you and you're a very traditional physical therapist, you're more interested in getting the bang for your buck, but here I am working from this other route, but it's bringing you less. Is that something that would affect the physical therapy? So is that something where you would come to me?
That would affect the bottom line of the clinic. So it would need to be budgeted for and expected. And that's why I think where some of the tension comes in, and they look at productivity and say, look, I need to be making this much money off of each person that works here for me. Because I'm also paying all of these other people and you and all of that. So it eats into the bottom line, as the phrase goes.
And do you think that's the cause of some of this pushback that clinicians are experiencing with their
definitely
clinics that they work, because they're wanting to work from this way, but they don't realize it's actually costing the clinic money?
And why people might not be taking it on or wanting to do it, or think, well, that's all well and good, but we can't actually live that way. So that's the tension that I was talking about. And so you go to a conference and you come back to your clinic and you're all excited and you want to really listen to people and include them in planning, and the person's scared and slow, and now you have another person that's waiting for you, and you didn't get a chance to do your documentation, and the clinic manager's grumpy because you only had one billable unit out of that whole time. And it's a structural change.
Well, you just shined a flashlight on it, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, a very dark, nasty flashlight on it.
But, you got all the little slugs squirring out.
Little cockroaches of healthcare. But I do think, so I've worked in a variety of settings because I've worked around the country, different states at different years. And both of those things matter because, as we all know, in healthcare in this country, it changes. Of what's covered, what's not covered, what's allowed, all of those things. And I have not for very many years now. The most I was ever expected to see an hour was 4, and I refused because I was doing really crappy care, and I could tell that these people were getting kind of like triaged, but I couldn't really justify the cost for what they were getting because it was just too fast. So I argued. Now, I understand when I say that, it makes me sound very brave and bold, but I also didn't need to work. I worked because I liked it. But as a military officer spouse at the time, I was expected to be on post going to meetings, and I was being kind of scandalous by working. So there was a lot of pressure to just don't work. So, from my view, it's like, well, if this work situation is that bad, I can just go be a good old Army wife and not work. So it made me willing to have conversations that other people might not be willing to have, because you can get fired for doing that. It's like, you don't want to see this, go find some other job. And not very many people can really afford to just get fired. Makes it hard to find another job. But so I recognize that I was coming from a place of privilege and being able to say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not providing good care. I'm not double booking anyone with neurological conditions or a pediatric patient. So when I saw that population, I was just one-on-one. Had I been doing pelvic health at the time, it would have been the same. No, I'm not seeing two people with pelvic health at the same time. But I think you could. If I had a good PT assistant, I could do two people an hour. But the PT assistant would be seeing them for half of that time. Yeah. So management tries to change it. It's hard for PTs to stand up for themselves because they need a job. But I do think it's necessary. And I think the system needs to change to where we get paid enough to be able to provide good care, rather than trying to figure out how to provide good care in a crappy situation.
Do you have any ideas of what that conversation might look like? Can you hear me?
I can. It got a little bit.
Okay, my mic goes in and out sometimes.
Okay.
I need a new mic.
What would that conversation look like?
So if I wanted, so like if you were my boss, but you were more focused on, the bottom line, but then I could also see that part of you also cared about your patients. Do you think it's possible for people who work for under clinicians to come to begin that conversation within the workplace?
I think you're going to need
that.
It's a really good question. I think you're going to need some data to be able to help you, like patient satisfaction data. So if you're willing to take a little less per visit as a boss for a really good reputation in town, it might be worth it. To say, okay, we're gonna take a 10% reduction. I'm making these numbers up in our per patient income, but we now are considered the best provider in town. That's better marketing than you can have from anything.
So you're talking about maybe if I was to bring this to your attention about this idea, maybe as someone who's your employee, I could bring to you the idea of, hey, let's do patient surveys, or even have somebody, on their side time or whatever, call every patient and just have them answer a few questions. And then
would you refer friends and family here? Because you're always looking for new people. We're supposed to help people in the physical therapy world. The idea is not to keep people as patients forever, but to help them be independent. And then we're there when they need us, but not to say you're going to have to come back regularly or you won't be okay. Patient referrals, the patient referring other patients, and satisfaction. So they go back and tell their other doctors and everyone they talk to what a great experience they had and how they really felt like it was channeled to them. And those kind of things, that's the best kind of marketing you could have. So I would argue that that's a selling point, but you'd need data on it. Another selling point is it's a really powerful, theoretically, it is a very powerful bargaining position to be able to say, look, because we have how our clinic is set up and we see people more focused towards them and we take the time, a little bit more time with each person. Maybe we don't see as many people, but we do just really individualized care. we can get people back to function one visit sooner than other people do. And if you're looking at third-party payers, that adds up a lot. So if we're right, and this really is a more efficient, more effective way to help people, then it will take less visits per person.
Mm-hmm.
So governments and third-party payers would be very interested in that because then they're ultimately paying less for services.
Have you seen any research done on that?
They're trying to. They're doing. There's a program called FODA that tracks it. That they do a lot of outcome measures and stuff. I'm trying to remember the name of the researcher that is doing a lot of work on this. John Childs is one of them, but that's not the one I'm thinking of.
Is that FODA or PHODA?
FOTA.
Oh.
Or maybe FOTO, FOTO. I'm so good at this.
Just Google either one.
Google those, patient outcome studies, physical therapy. Yeah, so you sign up for it, you pay for it, but it tracks your outcomes. The APTA has something like that now where they're looking at what each individual clinic and therapist are taking for different diagnoses to see.
Oh, so it actually will track your clinic's outcomes.
Yeah, you have to put them in, but yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Clinic and individual outcomes so that you can say, we take on average this many visits to get a person better with a ACL repair, whatever. There's problems with it. We had people like J.W. Matheson on here talking, or Eric Mira, that they would be pointing out the errors of that data. Steve Camper could do it too. It's like, so because as Bronnie Thompson says, we'll drop all the smart names. If you measure the wrong thing well, you still don't know anything.
Yeah.
So it's possible that these outcome measures that are being used for these studies are not the right questions to be asking. But it is a start, and it is a way to get the conversation going, to go away from how many units did we bill to what's the outcome for health for what we're doing. And I think that goes very well into the push in all realms of healthcare for population health, in that we all should be playing a role in helping to help people be healthier, to help communities be healthier. And that's going to take all of us working together to reverse some trends.
But I really like that idea you have about the data, and then and bringing that, tracking your clinic's pay, if you're an employee, tracking your clinic's record, tracking your clinic's patient perspective or patient
patient outcome. You could, a therapist could do that on their own with an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what this is. It's just, you don't have to build it. It's already built. So,
because
you track it yourself.
Yeah, because as we know, data often shows us the opposite of what we think. So.
It does. Like, I am doing great. And I said that once in a talk. I was like, I'm doing great. Because no one's ever come back and said, well, you really messed me up and things like that. And then I laughed and I said, but I historically have moved every 2 or 3 years. So who really knows?
And that's what I heard when I was in the massage profession. Now, I did used to call my patients. If I hadn't seen them our clients after so many months, I would call them and find out what was going on. And then that gave me a picture of what, was happening. But most people don't. They don't know why people drop off, and they just assume they're getting better.
Right? Because when they disappear, we don't know what happened. And feed our cats and all those other things. So we need some take-home money. And then any employees you have, or overhead and all of that, just like a household budget, it's expensive. So that comes down into who's paying for it and why are they paying for it, and all of that tracking of data to show that, look, we think that what we do is going to make a difference in people's health, so this service is worth it. We should be able to show that somehow. But that's like anything, right? You buy your groceries and you want them to taste good, and the shirt should fit, and your roof should
in the oven, and there should be cookies in there.
I know.
So because what we've discussed so far, it sounds like there's been a couple suggestions that you've given One is if you own the clinic, you could hire more people to bring in so that you can extend the time you spend with your patient, make it more valuable. And then the second option is if you're an employee and the clinic director doesn't really, it seems like they are a little more interested in the bottom line, then you could maybe do that research to find out about if the patients are feeling like they're getting good care, because then you could see if they don't feel like they're getting good care and not referring you, then maybe think about changing that a little bit. Are there any other things that you would recommend for someone who, say, might just be an employee and they want to have this conversation? In Jonathan Foss, it's a free video on the San Diego Pain Summit page, but Jonathan Foss gives a really good presentation on communication, how when we start the conversation with our colleagues, we should plan to be in it for the long haul. So it's not something we're not going to change minds right away, but we can slowly start to introduce these other things.
It is, and because it's in many ways a culture shift here in the U.S. Of what are expectations. It's all the same. It sounds an awful lot like we're having a pain discussion. What are the expectations? And a culture shift, and you can't go running in saying you're all wrong, you're doing it wrong, even though that might be what you're thinking. You have to pick something to work on, and you should be able to measure that it's making a difference. So the thing I would say to clinicians of any kind is, if you want to show that by adding these techniques and thought processes into treatment that it's making a difference, measure it. Pick an outcome measure that you think is appropriate to your population, and start using it with every single patient you have. Track it on an Excel spreadsheet. Did this person reach their goals? Yes or no? Do they say they're better? Yes or no? There's a lot of problems to those questions, and then my research friends would have better ideas.
But general market kind of research.
But just general market research, right? Did you like that? Would you refer a friend? Or would you send your kid here? That kind of thing. Because it's getting to trust, really. Mm-hmm. Do they trust you? They might like you, but do they trust you? Mm-hmm. And did they get better? So track it, because what if your boss is right and you could have the same outcome by seeing 4 people an hour and you'd make more money? Mm-hmm. We should probably know that. I don't think it's right. And I feel like I have better outcome, and I have more satisfaction by seeing people individually. Mm-hmm. I could do that for half an hour, and sometimes I do, and sometimes it's an hour. It's really dependent on what the person needs.
Well, I can say from a patient's perspective of going to physical therapy and being one of those patients where I was in one room and someone was in another room, and the physical therapist just went from, I think there were 3 of us in a room. I actually didn't feel like I had good care. I just felt like my insurance was covering it. So I was like, fine, my insurance is covering it, so I don't have to pay.
Right.
But if I had to pay for that, I would not have paid for that.
But you do pay for that by paying for your insurance.
Because I could just lay on my floor and put an ice bag on my back.
Right. But why should insurance pay for that either? Yeah. And then I think that's part of why the payments are smaller than they should be from insurance. Mm-hmm. There's just so many circles to this, but that's also why I took myself out of the game, and we don't take insurance. People pay us directly, and then they submit it to their insurance for reimbursement.
Yeah, and that almost seems like the way to go, because no matter how you run your clinic when you're taking insurance, unless the lobbying changes and the insurance companies change, there's not really much you can do about that, I don't think.
You sign a contract. So you sign your contract agreeing to a certain amount of payment, and then that's what it is. So, and some of them can say, if we deny it, you can't get it from patients. Mm-hmm. That's the stuff that made me go, no. That'd be like if I you wouldn't do that anywhere else. I would go get a haircut and then decide not to pay them later. And the business wouldn't be able to collect any money. You can't stay in business that way. Mm-hmm. So I think those are part of some of the reasons why people see a lot of people at one time, is because they're not always getting all the money that you would think they were getting by looking at that. And yeah, your insurance paid, but how much? And and is that why they see 3 people at a time?
Mhm.
If the insurance paid 3 times as much, would they still see 3 people at a time? Or could they just see one?
But I also think it explains the position of the clinic owner, because it's easy as an employer to say, oh, the owner of my clinic, they don't care about this pain research education. They don't care about helping the patient, but that may not be the story. It may be,
They would like to pay your salary and
yeah.
the insurance and the receptionist salary and
Mm-hmm.
the rent and all of those things. So there are more parts to it. But with my little story of okay, so you need 3 patients an hour at 100 a person, to be able to cover all your costs.
Mm-hmm.
If they changed it and they started paying 300 for a visit, would you drop to 1, or would you say, wow, now I make 3 times as much as I used to?
And that's a hard question, because a lot of times when people are seeing higher dollar amounts, they just want more.
Well, what if we knew that there'd be a better outcome with one individual care? Would that change it? Or would you still just say, okay, well, I was providing decent enough care before, and now I can make more money and finally pay my kids' college bills or something like that?
So maybe it depends on where your heart is.
Yeah, maybe. I was just teaching
I am
over.
personally more concerned with the pay. I mean, I still
I
want
am
to.
too. It's like, well, I was just teaching over in France, and the wonderful therapist that was my interpreter, patient woman that she is, she she her and I were talking, and it's like, there's that patient first as a really, and it's like, no, I am going to talk to you for an extra 20 minutes, and no, I'm not going to charge you for it, because you just told me you had to choose whether you were going to pay rent or feed your cat. So I'm not taking your cat food money for 10 more minutes of talking to you. And we were laughing about what really bad business policy that was, but good human.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna err on the side of be a good human, and we'll figure out a way to make enough money at it to survive and thrive and all those good things, but we don't have to be greedy.
Yeah, I see that in the, I do search engine optimization, and we kind of have something similar there, where there's these tools you can pay for, enter somebody's website into it, and it spits out a lot of information about the site. And then the person just hands that over to the client, instead of looking at that information and strategically trying to find out what needs to be changed, like what matches the client's goals, what. So that's probably the similar in any profession
Yeah,
you have.
it really is, because you don't know the meaning. Like
Mm-hmm.
someone said something about our website the other day, and like it would look better like this, and I was like, it probably would fit all of those the social media things, but we like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so where's the value in, yes, but we like that. That's us.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
and
your values and your business's values and goals. And I guess for those who don't care so much about the patients, they can keep taking the dollar. But then those that do, they're really in a pickle if they're working at a clinic that needs that extra income and finds it difficult to,
or has gotten
yeah.
used to it and just thinks that they can't survive another way. I mean, but I do think that we need to remember there are a lot of moving parts to that discussion about how much do you charge, and why would you, and do you really need to see people one person at a time? Would you
Mm-hmm.
be just as good seeing like you said, for a half an hour and having someone else do some of the treatment? Um, could you get the same outcome with that? If you could, then it might be a better business decision if you have the right person working with you. That's a lot of ifs. So I don't rule it out as a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I do think if someone's working in a setting where they're just, we talked, Mark Milligan and I talked about burnout, when you start to just get eaten up from the inside, where you feel like you're not providing the care a person needs, and you want to do better, but you're not allowed to do better. That is hard. So what could you do? Well, start gathering some data and take a look and talk to patients and make a case for doing it different and how it could still work financially.
But from a code perspective, you can
Bill what you do. It is fair to count education.
Okay.
And discussing spending time talking about why you're doing these exercises or movements that seem totally arbitrary, to make it not arbitrary, is part of teaching exercise. Or if it's a sensory reeducation, that's part of neuromuscular reed. The person needs to understand why they're doing it. You need to understand why you're doing it. But so they say that even the best exercise or re-education program in the world won't help if the person doesn't do it. So it's up to us to make it meaningful, to match the meaning that they need, so that we can understand what's important to them, and we provide information and things that can help them that fit into their life to increase the likelihood that it will actually match and get done enough to make a difference.
Do you think there's any resources that might relate to what we've been talking about that somebody could go?
Well, if they want to find out, if you thought, you know what, this talk about coding and billing was so incredibly intriguing, I want to know more.
You never know.
You never know. Tell me more. Yes, there are some really good resources on that. Wow, depending on where you want to go, I'm going to get the name wrong if I try and give it to you. So why don't I provide that?
Send me the link. Yeah, send me the links and I'll have them. Sorry, it's my jobber. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I guess I need to get that taken care of before I do more interviews. Yeah, just send me the links and I'll have them placed on this page.
Yeah, and that we could say, if you just love coding and the legitimacy of it, there are a couple really good people that have been, especially for physical therapists, looking at this. They know the rules, they know the laws, they understand the tension, and they're keeping up with current, the latest version of where we are in healthcare and what's legal and what's ethical and what fits our practice acts and those kind of things. And they're not boring to listen to either. So they do make coding interesting. The gift.
That'll be great, because I think that there is definitely an interest in this. I've had people contact me wanting to have discussions about this before. So I think there is an interest out there.
Well, and you'll hear very conflicting things. Very conflicting things. And the two names and links I'm going to give you are, I think, the two people I have come across that I find most ethical and most up to date. And they're good people. So, and I get no financial benefit from saying that. It's just true.
Well, I would trust anything that you, Sandy, said. You're like one of my go-to voices. So.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, so that there's information on coding and the ethics and rules and how to those documents and those websites are designed to help the patient get the best outcome and the person get paid, both. It's not how do you get paid the most, or how do you help the person and keep your fingers crossed you'll make enough money. It's how do we work within the system to get paid what we should get paid, our time is valuable, and provide the care that the person needs. And that's really what we're all aiming to do. And it doesn't have to be horrible, and it doesn't have to be, well, it can be less bad. It can just be less bad. And that's coming from someone who said, forget all of you, I'm going out of network. I don't want to deal with it. But I understand that that's not available to everyone. So you can make the challenges fit your ethics and ability and still pay rent and all of those important things.
Well, I think those are really positive considerations, considering the light you shined in that dark corner.
Oh man, there's so much. And there, I think of a big part of it, like we could change a lot of that if every person who billed someone for a service knew what they were billing and why, and because you're supposed to, and also knew what was getting reimbursed.
Mm.
And some people would say that it doesn't matter what's getting reimbursed, but it does, because if you just keep making do with it, then the system doesn't change. And I think if more people knew, wait a minute, I just worked my butt off for an hour with this person and the insurance company paid us a whole $42, that you would get frustrated and angry and change things instead of trying to bill differently so you get paid more, which is the wrong way to go about it.
So I want to thank you for your time, Sandy, because this was a lot of interesting information for me as well. But I think we've had some positive sprinkles in there, so
Yes.
we're not leaving anyone hanging. But I do wonder what would be something that you could tell somebody that they can take with them to work tomorrow, or if they're watching this on the weekend on Monday, something from this discussion, that they can just take and use.
I would offer a challenge, I think, to get out your Excel spreadsheet and see, measure what you're doing. Are people getting better with how you're treating them? Is there something you would like to change to help change things? What would that be? But you need to know where you are right now to be able to look at change. So I'd challenge some data collection and say, all right, what's going on? Take a look at it. You have the information. You just need to write it down. Do it for like 3 months and see what it looks like.
I like it.
Then you can see what you could change.
Yeah, you don't know unless you do that.
And you could be doing it absolutely perfect. And then you'd be like, well, you know what? This is working. I'm good. People are happy, goals. Huh. Okay.
Sometimes you find that out. Sometimes
right?
you think there's a problem, and then you do the data, and then it's like, oh, there isn't a problem.
Look at that. Or I'm making it harder than I need to.
Yeah.
So take a look. That would be my things. Just take a look, see where you are. But your patients already know the answer. You can just ask them.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, for joining us here. And anyone watching, just feel free to visit her bio page to learn more about her. And I will also have the links that she shares on that page as well. And thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.